Tabletop gaming is experiencing a full-blown renaissance. People everywhere are learning that tabletop games are a great way to reconnect with the analog world around them and rediscover their original social network. And so can you, thanks to GameBox Monthly. GameBox Monthly sends a unique new tabletop game right to your door every month. There are multiple subscriptions to choose from, and you can personalize each of them to fit your style. So whether you're looking to bring the family together for a weekly game night, a couple looking for the best stay-at-home date idea, or just someone looking for a great new way to spend a night with friends, GameBox sends a title just for you, letting you focus on what matters most, having great times with great people. So visit GameBoxMonthly.com now and use the promo code DRAGON to get an exclusive discount just for Dragon Wagon Radio listeners. Again, that's promo code DRAGON. Discounts. Everybody likes discounts. So what are you waiting for? Visit GameBoxMonthly.com right now and rediscover social.
Let's talk about it.
Yes, let's talk about it indeed. Welcome back to another installment of Elaborate. I am your host, Jake Lloyd. That's at Liquid Jake on Twitters. You guys, it has been a year, 1 year since launch. I thought today it would make the most sense to have on my bestie, writer, sketch, improviser, and the host of Myth Understood. He's the Statler to my Waldorf, the Ethel to my Lucy, the Andy Griffith to my Don Knotts. I'm sitting down with Paul Bianchi. Hi, Paul.
Hey, Jake.
How's it going, bud?
Oh, you know.
You're a little low. I got to raise your volumes.
You have to raise my volume even after I yelled.
Yeah, I think, you know what? You just have a very, you have a very light tone.
I have a light tone.
Like, even your yelling is a normal person's inside voice.
Okay.
Whereas I am constantly screaming.
I've heard that my voice doesn't naturally carry.
Really? If somebody has told you that your voice doesn't carry?
Uh-huh.
I feel like it was somebody taking a shot at you.
Oh, it was my mother, so yes.
Oh. Your mom told you your voice don't carry? Were you constantly being asked to repeat yourself as a kid?
No, it was mostly in my first forays of being in school theater and learning about projection and using your diaphragm. And I was a shy child, and I'm still a shy child. And yeah, I have trouble projecting.
Yeah, I don't think I ever had that problem.
Yeah, you've always been loud as shit.
Yeller.
Yeah,
I've talked a little bit about it on the show. I think Verona Blue and I, who was an early guest, episode 4, I think it was.
It was episode 4.
Really? You remember?
I remember because I just looked at your Instagram and I was like, how many episodes has he had? And then I saw that picture of her winking with one eye.
There you go.
As one does.
Yeah, because you don't. If it's 2, it's blinking.
Well, unless you have 3 eyes, you might wink with 2 and keep one eye open.
Sure.
Yeah.
I love that band When I Open. In that episode, I think we both realized that the reason we're yellers is because of our crippling insecurity. And most people deal with that crippling insecurity by being softer and quieter.
Mm-hmm.
But our way is by yelling because we're just desperate to be heard.
Sure.
And that's something that as a kid, I was always petrified of not being heard amongst the family or, in a group of friends, I always felt like everybody was talking and nobody cared about what I had to say. So I'd do that. I still find myself doing that thing where I will be in a group and I'll say something and I'll say it again louder and I'll say it again louder. And I'll be like, yeah, Jake, we heard you.
Yeah.
We heard you the first time.
We get it.
We just don't care.
Yeah, I get it. You were stabbed. Okay, let's move on.
Right. But that's why I'm a yeller. I mean, I'm sure the listeners at this point, if this is your first episode, you're going to learn I am a yeller. Go back and listen to other episodes. Go back to the beginning. You were the very first ever guest of Elaborate.
I was.
And you were technically like the second and third and the fourth guest as well, but people didn't hear those episodes.
Yeah, I was non-consecutive Paul.
Non-consecutive Paul?
Yes.
I don't understand.
I mean, it was. I was just. I'm myself, and my appearances were non-consecutive.
Fair. What I was getting at was that we recorded a bunch of test episodes.
We did, yeah.
And then I released one of them as the official first.
Because we had to figure out if we could communicate with each other first.
Yeah, I also had to figure out whether or not I wanted to do this.
It was a lot like Arrival, where I was.
The spoilers.
Oh yeah.
Haven't seen it yet.
You haven't seen it? I just watched it the other day.
It's been in. I know you said so, and you said it was kind of heavy, and that's the reason why I haven't watched it. Is because my lovely girlfriend Alexandra and I, who maybe we'll talk a little bit about, because this podcast is one of the reasons we're together. But we have this. We do that thing that most couples do, where you go, "What do you want to watch?" and then you scroll through the Netflix for 45 hours. We just decided that we just have all the movies that we know we want to watch, inevitably, in a hat. Essentially, it's a little bin, but it's a hat. And then whatever we pick out, we have to watch. That's just how it works. Like no backsies.
It's in a hat?
No, it's not in a hat. I was saying a figurative hat. Because it's actually in a Gary Svong light sphere, which is a strobe for photography. See, I don't want to explain that. You made me explain it.
I made you elaborate.
Didn't want to, because people are going to be like, I don't get what he's talking about.
Yeah.
It's just this fucking plastic dome. And we pick a movie out, and then that's what we have to watch. It doesn't matter if one of us was like really kind of gunning for it and the other one wasn't. We just have to watch it. And before we pick out of the hat, we sometimes will remove titles that we were like, well, this is a little bit too heavy for right now, because sometimes we're just like, a random evening and we're just kind of looking for something light before we go to bed. And Arrival is one of those movies that has been in and out of it many times because we're worried that it's going to be too heavy.
Yeah, my assessment of it is not that it's super heavy, just more that it's cerebral.
But is it sad? I guess sad is the word we're looking for more so.
I wouldn't.
No? Okay.
I wouldn't call it sad.
So maybe we need to stop pulling it out of the hat.
Yeah.
We just feel like it's going to be like.
Yeah, it's mostly it's dry and cerebral.
Okay, so maybe that's not something we need to keep pulling out of the hat.
Yeah,
we'll leave it in.
I've been talking to people a lot recently about my music tastes.
Okay.
And when people ask me what my favorite genre is of music, I say I like sad music.
Yeah.
And I think that's it's sort of it's similar where like I tend to engage with media that has a tone like that like
somber.
I enjoyed watching Big Little Lies for a similar reason.
Okay.
I don't know if you ever sat through that, but that was that.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was a good one this year in review.
All of a sudden, we just start reviewing movies. The whole podcast style just changes to a generic movie review show. But anyways,
to hell with that idea.
The first episode came out on March 14th, and it was also the first episode of anything on the Dragon Wagon Radio Podcast Network. It has been a couple days shy of a year. We're recording this on the 11th. Tomorrow is the 12th when people will hear this. If people hear this. And it's been a great year. Your show, Myth Understood, is a fantastic show where you converse with your other bestie, Sarah Oliver, about all things Greek mythology. Incredibly successful, especially in the past couple months. It really found an incredible audience.
Yeah, I think part of that was due to the fact of adding Greek mythology podcast, because people were like, what is Myth Understood? And now they know for sure what it is.
Yeah. So anybody out there who's looking to start a podcast, be very specific in your titling.
Yeah.
It makes it go a long way.
Mm-hmm.
The Zen Zenith's show, the House Show, another fantastic show that we do. We had our 1 year anniversary. We had like a whole weekend here last week. That's like one of the most rewarding things that I do today is produce the House Show. And I know people that are listening to this like, what the fuck? What about this show that you do? I love the show. This show is great. But getting to produce the House Show and meet all of these incredible artists, and like I've discovered so many of my new favorite musicians, speaking of sad music, from that show.
Because there's a lot of sad music on the show?
Well, do you know what it is? Is that I think that even if there's not necessarily sad music, people tend to play their sadder songs because of the setting. Because it's like usually people that play generally with big bands come in and they play a little bit more of like stripped down, kind of acoustic-y, and that lends people to play their more somber tunes.
And they also know that Zen is going to engage with them and have a conversation that's not necessarily about their music and atypical questions that might be more personal and emotional.
Totally, yeah. And so, I mean, I'm absolutely thrilled with what's going on with Dragon Wagon Radio, and I look forward to continuing to grow, continuing to have more shows, more great artists and personalities, I guess you would say. But anyways, what else has happened? I mean, when we first started the show, you were kind of on every now and then, but then I started getting more sporadic kind of guests, and we couldn't lock down. It's been probably well over like 6-7 months since you specifically have been on.
Yeah.
Where does Paul find himself after the first year of Elaborate?
Well, this has been a terrific year for me in many ways. I like to set goals at the beginning of the year. One might call them resolutions, and
one might, just one person.
And one of those resolutions was my true passion in life is writing. I pay the bills with production design, and I have been trying to move away from production design, even though it is something I enjoy doing, and so that I can do more writing. And this has been a year where I have achieved. I would say I've achieved that goal. In terms, I'm not like in the finish line, but
you took steps.
I took steps, and I'm moving in that direction. I wrote a 3-part music video for country musician Hunter Hayes.
Right. That just had like a fairly big a premiere, so to speak.
Yeah, it had
I would never think that music videos had premieres.
Oh, I mean, anyone who has fandom will
Right.
have premiere for something.
Right.
And he has a base of very loyal fans, and it was a rewarding experience to work with the producers and work
Right.
with him and go and watch all 3 music videos in succession and have everyone watch the story and talk to me.
So here's a couple questions just about this process, because
Sure.
Somebody who never really thought about the writing of a music video as much as the the director has a vision sort of thing.
Yeah.
Was there dialogue in said music video? Was it sort of the drama in that sense?
Yes, there was dialogue in the music video.
Outside of the song.
And it did make me think like there has to be a writer involved.
Right.
I hate that this is the first music video that I thought of that has dialogue in it.
Trapped in a Closet.
No.
Oh, okay.
You went to R. Kelly. I went to Britney Spears. And I was thinking of the song
fair.
Oops, I Did It Again. And
What dialogue? I don't remember.
And there's a part in the middle of the song where she the guy in the music video,
give it to us, Paul.
the guy in the music video, who's her love interest, says, hey, I got this for you. I swam to the bottom of the ocean after the old lady threw it in. And he gives her the heart of the ocean
from Titanic.
And she goes, oh, thank you. And then it cuts to, oops, I did it again.
Like the key change? That's the key change, maybe?
Yeah, I think so.
Wait, what? Hang on. Was it just you think it was just a stab at relevance?
I think it was a stab at relevance.
Popular right now.
And it was also supposed to, I guess, tell the story that she doesn't really care about the people she's in relationships with. I don't know.
No matter what they do or how hard that no matter how deep they actually literally swim.
Yeah, ain't no valley low, ain't no mountain high enough for them to win her heart.
Sure. So in any case, you write this. Oh, you have a little pod dog. Right now.
I have a pod dog next to my face.
He's literally smelling your mustache as you're talking to the microphone.
But where I was going with even bringing that up in the first place was just that someone had to write that.
Right. Oh, right. Yeah.
Britney Spears didn't write that. The director didn't write that. Maybe the director did write it, but there was a script.
I've got this great idea, Britney.
Yeah. And
that's what every music video director sounds like to me. We're going to make this a great song. Everything is going to be fantastic. You're going to love it. You're going to win so many of the MTV awards.
And it's amazing that you can speak as clearly as that with that big cigar in your mouth, too. This particular music video series was united by a narrative story that did have dialogue, and that was the challenge. It was, hey, I've written 3 songs. I want them to be united by an arcing, branching, layered love story. And
are the songs? Is the content of the songs relevant to the story, or did you have to find a way to weave that?
I had to figure out how they were relevant to the story.
Nice.
And sometimes there were sort of, sidestepping a little bit the message of the story, but in order for there to be drama, you have to do that a little bit.
Sure.
And that was something to learn too, is that in any happy song, there can also be a bit of bittersweetness to a happy song.
Totally.
Yeah.
Where was this premiere?
It was in Nashville, Tennessee.
Nashville. That's where your parents live, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. And at Regal Cinemas, and
I love a Regal theater.
Yeah, and
I miss Regal theaters. There's only one here, downtown LA at LA Live. and I'd never go because why would I go to a movie down there when there's 20 more movie theaters? Right
Yeah,
now?
and actually, when we were at the Regal Cinema, Regal asked me about like I haven't seen Jake in a while, so
Oh, they see, they know
the theater. Yeah,
that specific one in Nashville.
Mhm.
People don't know this. They're all very connected. Everybody
yeah,
knows
the
each other.
hive mind. They're like the Borg.
Hive mind.
Yeah, and so we had a panel, and anytime any artist who is listening understands that you finish a piece of artwork, and especially a collaborative piece,
Right.
and you end up with things that you have second thoughts about and your
absolutely.
own criticisms about, but to have the audience come up to me afterwards and like tell me like, oh, I cried, and like,
Right.
oh, it was so
Yeah.
moving, and like I had a military romance, and people, especially country fans, like
Right.
there's usually someone in their family who's in the military, and just like the emotion that was behind that story, they really connected to. So
Yeah, I can empathize with that. My feature film, that I will never forget the response in Phoenix. I mean, I've had good responses from it everywhere, but specifically at the Phoenix Film Festival, that was unique because I was there by myself. I didn't have my boy Tony with which I usually have, like my co-star and my other bestie, and I was sort of like didn't really enjoy the screening. I didn't like the responses that it got, that kind of stuff, like in the room in the moment. But then afterwards, people would walk up, and this one woman was just like crying, and she walked up and she was like, that's the best movie I've ever seen. And I know she's wrong, but it was more about that, like, it was because of a thing that I don't want to give away, that she talked about. She was like, this was so incredibly personal to me, and I literally like have to go home and call somebody now because of what. And I just remember being like, okay, like, even though I hate it, I can't watch the thing. Like, hey, this woman really got something out of it, and it made me really emotional, and it felt really nice.
well, and maybe because art is so subjective, maybe the thing that you tapped into that movie literally did make that the most rewarding cinematic experience
For
because
that person,
because you tapped into her life in ways you could have never
Right.
foreseen.
Sure.
Except you did do extensive research on her life, and you were targeting this movie at her.
Yeah. Most people, when they make a movie, they're really making it for one person. If you
Yeah.
can get over that one person, you made it. That's what they say in Hollywood.
I think so.
So you had a really rewarding screening in Nashville.
Yeah.
Did Mom and Pop come?
Mom and Pop came, and sister came.
Oh, that's
So it was
right. I always forget your sister. She doesn't live there though.
my sister lives in
She
Nashville.
does live in
Yeah.
Nashville. Remind me of your sister's name.
Marika.
I know what the name is. I just can't pronounce it.
It's Marika. It is.
It's like Eureka with an M.
yes.
Marika.
It's a Dutch name.
I feel terrible. Marika, if you're watching, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I think I always read it as like Marielke or something weird.
I think if you've met so briefly that
True.
I can't recall a moment where you've met.
Well, yeah, we met at your show
Oh.
here in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
At a couple of your shows. At
Okay.
Control Alt Right Delete, maybe.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, well, speaking of which, this is a segue. What has the stage brought you this year? Because you clearly had this fantastic writing experience where you got to write this 3-part music video for this fantastic country artist. But you are also incredibly talented stage writer. You wrote and directed and starred in a play loosely based on your life.
Yeah.
Musical, I guess you would say, for the Second City here in Hollywood.
Yeah, the musical part of it is the most like my life.
Right, of course,
Yeah.
because you tend to just burst out into song.
I really do.
I'm always like, geez Louise, when did you have time to choreograph that with the fucking woman who works at Trader Joe's?
Yeah, funny to say geez Louise too. I was just about to say I'm a regular Linda Belcher. So
Hey,
there you go. What's interesting is a friend of mine, Haley, we were just talking about if there's anything about production that ever makes us feel burnt out,
Mhm.
or anything about writing, just the process in general.
Right.
And I realized that there is something about film production that makes me feel annoyed. And there's
Really?
some like that I know going in, like, okay, this part's gonna be hard. I hate this part. Like,
Right.
there are just things that come with
There's
a
things
large
that
collaborative
loom over you.
film process, especially dealing with all of the cooks that enter the kitchen. There's so many. But the thing that I've noticed is that I don't think I'll ever stop loving film for one hand. But I also will never stop loving theater, and theater especially on the smaller scale that I do it in, has so much less of all of that annoys me, and the most annoying thing is just scheduling people.
Right.
But aside from that, the immediacy of theater, and by that I mean you write something, you imagine how the audience is going to react, and then you go, and the audience reacts usually exactly, in my experience, usually exactly how I intend for them to react, which is fantastic, and it's a fantastic feeling. You feel like
Sure.
an evil puppet master,
Right.
but
yeah, of course.
and that's a delight, and I'll never get tired of that. So I perform regularly at Second City with my short form improv group, and a really rewarding thing that happened with that was that there was this a young woman who had been going to our shows all summer,
Mhm.
and I didn't know that she was only briefly in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And she was taking a few classes there at Second City, and then she left and went back to the Middle East where she lives, and found me on Instagram and told me that watching our show monthly made her inspired to start her own improv group where she lives in the Middle East, which
Wow.
is and I need to like look at that Instagram post again, because I'm specifically saying the Middle East because right now I'm not exactly
You're
sure which
blanking.
country it is.
Sure.
But it's the sort of it's one of the countries where a young woman having an improv club would I think would not be without its hardships
Right,
for her to
sure,
put together.
sure.
So that made me feel very
That's great.
happy
Yeah.
and like that I have made a difference. And I think that's one of the things that all of my creative friends talk about is why do we do this? Why do we do a very hard, difficult path?
Right.
And for me, I think it sort of started from my love of books as a kid, and reading my young adult novels and having my mind get changed and enriched. And I think that that's sort of why I do it, is like this, like leaving my mark on,
In hopes to pay that forward.
yeah, and helping to shape young minds and encourage independent thought, and
Interesting.
because that's such a powerful thing to have someone say, "Hey, I read something you wrote, or I
Right.
saw something you wrote,"
Yeah.
and it opened up a part of my brain I didn't know I
Right.
had.
A
And
new joy sensor that
Yeah.
just started triggering, and you're like, "Oh, this is nice."
yeah.
What about your book?
I can just mention that I have successfully completed a young adult novel that I had been working on for 3 years.
Yeah, that's a long time to be writing a thing,
Yep, it's a really long time.
especially because you hand wrote the whole thing.
I did.
Sometimes here in this very living room, you would sit and very smally,
Smallly.
very. Paul writes like you need a magnifying glass in order to read his words, but I don't know how he does it. It's incredible, but it's very efficient as far as how much stuff you can get on a page. I'll tell you that much. But you hand wrote this entire. It's like a sci-fi saga.
It's a sci-fi saga, the first book of a planned 3-book series, and I finished it in September. So that was an accomplishment for sure, and I'm having certain friends who I know read young adult novels are taking a look at it right now, and trying to give me some. Mostly they're just catching typos. I have so many typos, and then I'm going to try to sell it. But it's I guess I don't like, that's a whole nother podcast, is me telling the details of the book.
Right. Are you seeking like to just sell it outright and be like, okay, here's a thing, you guys own this now, selling the story, or are you seeking to get it published?
Oh,
like,
yeah, I'm seeking to get it published.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's
so you're not looking to just like sell it as a story and be like, here you go.
No,
Make movies or a TV show or whatever.
I mean, movies and a TV show out of it would be great, but
you'd want to helm them.
I would definitely want to assist in that. It's sort of the thing that Game of Thrones fans will say, "Oh, George R.R. Martin, stop working on the TV show and write your book. And it's like, no, they're making a show
Right.
out of the stuff that I made, and I need to have my hands on it.
Right,
so
right.
I'm sure, yeah. So that'd be a wonderful outcome. But all I anticipate is just selling it and having a book that exists that with my name on it, and having more books. Because I'm not going to stop even if the first book doesn't sell very well, or I can't sell it to anyone at all.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, because I believe in the story, and I believe it's good. I enjoy reading it.
Yeah.
So,
and like you said, at the end of the day, it's just you just need to create it anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, that's sort of the situation that I'm in now, where my feature pinch, we're so happy to finally be having an LA screening here, but I'm still trying to sell it. I'm still taking meetings with sales and acquisitions people and like discussing the best ways to have it distributed and all this sort of stuff. And in that same time, all I'm thinking about is like, I just want to make another movie. And when I finished that movie, I said to myself, I will never make another movie like this again. And I don't mean the content of the movie. I mean the way that it was made. And now I am just like, well, I guess we're doing that again. Because all that time has passed, and I'm just like, nothing happened in the immediacy that you all anticipated happening.
Of course, yeah.
And I'm just sort of like, all right, well, I guess now I'm just gonna go make another one because that's what I have to do. It's not about
That's sort of what I'm doing too. Is in the meantime of waiting for people to get back to me from having read it, and I am doing a little bit of art for it, because that's again, if you're trying to sell a book or a screenplay, like, having art just sort of puts you on a different tier, like right away. Like, ooh, cool! I can visualize something.
Right. Even if I only read like the summary, I can also have a visual with that summary, which helps me fill in gaps and helps me get an idea of what the story is.
Yeah, exactly. And so in the meantime, while I'm doing that and waiting for certain things and trying to work with my lit manager to help sell it, I'm working on another book to write, and this one I'm attempting from a different direction. I'm writing it from as like a TV series.
Okay.
Because I found as I was writing the book, and I guess because I've been writing screenplays for so long, and watching a lot of serial television, that books to me are like a season of a TV show,
right? Chapters,
and they have the chapters and the arcs and the B stories and just the way it's set up. And I felt like sort of unfocused when I wrote my novel, because I would get sort of lost on like, ooh, what should I be focusing on right now?
Right.
And even though I had an outline, it wasn't until later on when I was like, oh, these are episodes,
right?
And that wasn't until I was on like chapter 14 or 15 that I figured that out.
And then it just made getting to the end of chapters easier.
Yeah.
Because you knew like, oh, this is the groundwork. This is where, if this was a TV show, this is where the commercial break would be, or this is where, these climax, these peaks and valleys, that kind of stuff.
So I'm writing a book based off of the character I portray in the pirate group that I perform in.
Okay. You're all over the place here.
Am I all over the place?
No, it's just gonna be people like, geez, what does this guy do?
I do a bunch of things. But I guess why I wanted to specifically say this is that I discovered something really interesting as I was writing a period piece that takes place in the 1700s. I wanted to find the correct vernacular that people would speak in for the most part,
right,
and not overuse it to the point that we don't understand what they're saying,
right,
but drop in keywords. And I found this amazing book. You can find it on the internet because the copyright certainly has worn out at this point. It was released in 1735, and it is a book called The Dictionary of the Vulgar Tongue. And it just is full of all the ways that people swore in the 1700s.
Oh, that's fun.
Specifically in England.
Okay.
And there were
so it's just like it's literally like Urban Dictionary.
Mm-hmm.
For that time period, or something to that.
And there are so many ways to call someone a prostitute. Like there are just like a jilt, a jade.
A jilt.
Mm-hmm. Well, a jilt specifically is a woman who promises you affection and then withholds it. So sort of like what's like a cock tease is what we would call it.
Fair, sure.
Yeah. And then I also a bellswagger is a bully. A clinch no, a clunch is
Clunch
is
with a U.
he's just a clownish, foolish person. There's oh boy,
Clunch.
there's so many great words, and I also like the words that we still use, like a scrub.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
I don't want no
still
scrubs.
was
Scrub's the guy that's gonna get no love from me.
yeah, that a scrub was a man of low standing,
Perfect.
which is
Exactly what
a
it
scrub
means.
is a man of low standing.
Don't remember that verse.
So yeah, so that's exciting. I don't know if you've ever attempted to write historical fiction, but it's fantastic.
That seems like a very specific undertaking.
One of the things too is like I think a lot of times when people are writing things that take place in the 1700s or earlier, you might call like, oh, hello, I'm Charles, and hello, I'm Matthew, but nicknames have existed forever, and that's something that like feels wrong almost to call someone Matt in the 1700s, but people were being called Matt in the 1700s.
I think you talked about this on the last episode of Myth Understood, if I'm not mistaken.
Did I?
I think it sounds yeah. Like it's just a weird thing to be like, hey, Dave.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yeah. Oh, that's right. Because I remember, so for people who might be listening to this because they listen to Myth Understood, to pull the curtain back, I'm always there. I produce and I mix and engineer the show. So I'm in the room always. And so usually I'm listening and just like seething, holding my tongue when I have opinions. And I remember
seething's an interesting word about
I
this.
remember. Well,
I'm angry about Zeus.
Well, let me get to it. I was very angry because not angry, but again, I'm a fictionalized cartoon version of who I am inside. Sarah made a big stink about the name Jason.
Oh,
like Jason is such a name, and the entire time I was thinking like, you never heard of Jason and the Argonauts? Like I specifically think of Jason and the Argonauts, like that. Those two things go
when
together.
you meet someone named Jason,
I could think of
where are the Argonauts?
Yeah, exactly.
Well done.
And I remember just being there, like making this face at Sarah, like, what do you mean? Come on.
Yeah,
I don't know. I turn into fucking.
Well, and that's happened a couple times
turn into
on
Larry
that,
David
on that series. Is that people will say I was thinking about the episode that we had Katie Foster on, and I mentioned the goddess Nemesis, and she was like, "Oh, what a coincidence!" And I was like, "Or that's the origin of where we get the word nemesis."
Right, of course.
Yeah, it's like, yep.
It's like, well, with a name like that, how do you not see it coming? Yeah. Joke. What were we just talking about? I lost my train of thought.
Well, we were talking about performing on stage and doing those sorts of things, but this has also been so much about me. What are you doing?
What am I doing? Nothing.
You're doing nothing?
Nothing.
I think you're I mean, we talked a bit about your movie is about to screen here in Los Angeles.
That it is.
And are you interested in talking about that?
I've talked about it on the show a lot already.
Oh, have you? Okay.
I mean, if people are listening regularly, they know all about it. But they can go to pinchmovie.com and they can see what it is. This year was a rewarding year in that I got to watch people watch my movie, which it's a weird thing to think about. All of those years where we would make shit for the internet, and you would just put something out there, and you would base people's enjoyment on it on how many views it got,
sure,
or how many clicks it got, and it's easy to get hung up on that. It's easy to be like, oh God, only, a couple hundred people looked at this thing. Whereas if, you had a screening and a couple hundred people showed up, you'd be like, this is incredible.
Yeah.
So like trying to retrain my brain to think about the importance of that. But then inversely, like you put something up on the internet and then it's just like, well, there it is. I hope people enjoyed it. But to like sit in a massive theater and actually have people next to you consume the thing that you made and hear the reactions.
And when strangers come, it's like, you chose to do this.
Right.
Wow.
Right. Yeah, like I'm assuming that the screening here in Atlanta is going to be mostly people that I know that feel obliged to come, that will likely be let down.
Yeah.
But no, I feel like it's going to be mostly cast and crew and that sort of thing. That's probably been the most rewarding thing about this year. I'm a little bummed that I haven't started the next one already. Like I've put so many, whereas you did a good job of making your resolution to take steps towards writing, I made mine to start the next project, and I kept putting months on it, and then those months kept coming and going.
I mean, for anyone
really
who's
bummy.
never attempted to shoot a film beyond just like a home movie.
Right.
There is so much planning. There's a reason that when you watch the credits at the end of the movie that it goes on forever, because
not in my movie.
well, yours is made by Jake. Bye.
It's pretty abrupt. I mean, like there's a lot of like, special thanks, but it's I mean, again, there was no crew, nothing like that. I mean, your name is probably on there just as much as anybody's as far as like miscellaneous camera crew.
Yeah.
Miscellaneous, this team.
Yoga practitioner.
That's right. You were an extra in my movie.
I was
just talking about that the other night with Alexandra.
Uh-huh.
Can't remember what we were talking about. Oh, I was talking about how like a lot of the stuff in the baseball field in the movie was like things that I came up with on the spot that day, because I was like, oh, I want to give these two actors a scene because they came out to do this thing and they had one or two lines in the script. But I wanted to give people more content. And I also wanted there to be definitive characters out there in the field and it be more, camaraderie, because it's never the same as when you get out there versus what's in your head. And once I got out there, I realized, oh, what's on the page is not enough. And so I wanted more.
You wanted some of that Sandlot energy.
Yeah, a little bit. Or just some of that, like, dudes hanging out.
Yeah.
And so I was telling her, like, how because of that, there's, like, no extras in the movie. And then I was like, wait a minute, that's not true. Paul is an extra in the movie a couple times.
Oh, yeah, I've walked
like
by.
2 different scenes you're around. Yeah. And she was like, I've never noticed it. I was like, well, that's because he's an actor. You don't notice him. He's in the background. He's blurry. But yeah, you come to a yoga class in the movie and very largely put down a yoga mat because there's only 2 people that showed, and I tried to get a lot of people to come. And I was like, we have to make it look as there's more people here, guys.
Yeah, I remember specifically doing that. There was another actress or an actress in the scene with me then.
Brianna Cap. I haven't seen her in a long time. She's sweetheart.
Right, that was my only day and time interacting with her, but we have a full backstory because we had to stand and talk with one another.
There's a lot of takes we did of that.
Yeah,
because it was all one shot, and so it was like a lot of pressure on the lead actress to do everything, and we didn't do enough rehearsal for that scene. So you guys did a lot of standing around. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it was great.
That's what it's all about. It's all about coming and helping.
That's what yoga's about. So it worked out.
But back to what we were talking about just like the productivity of the year. Little bummed that I didn't keep some of those month, deadlines I kept on myself. But this past month I definitely have had the fire under my ass to finish whatever the next project's screenplay is gonna be, to get it done. I have like all these outlines that I made, and I have all these different kind of ideas, and I definitely have more of a fire under my ass now than I did. Also, it's a weird thing, and here's the thing that's weird to talk about on this podcast.
Okay.
But the podcast network has actually been a detrimental to some of my other endeavors.
Well, of course, you have a lot of commitments and things to do, just holding this podcast network together.
Yeah, and I love doing it. Let me preface with that. Like I produce 12 shows or something like that. I don't remember where the number is now, but produce a ton of shows, and it's almost becoming a full-time job that I'm not getting any money for.
Yeah.
And I'm totally proud to do it. I love the content it's putting out there. I'm so happy that I've given a platform to good friends like you and Sarah, and to Zen and all these other people, where we've been able to sort of give people the best possible setup to succeed.
Yeah.
But because of that, I have definitely found myself sort of tied up in it. So in the year 2 of Dragon Wagon, I'm going to doing everything I can to put as much of that foot forward as I can, but I do need to do a better job myself of juggling this and the other stuff. And I think a lot of that just comes with my mindset. I mean, you can ask my girlfriend Alexandra, when there's a thing that's on my mind, that's the thing that's on my mind. I have whatever the opposite of ADD is.
Yeah.
In those moments where it's like, this is what I'm doing right now, and I have to do this. And so when the podcast network kicked off last year, that was all I was doing. And also just getting your bearings. The year 1 is always tougher because you have to figure out how you want everything to work. I have to figure out sort of what the workflow is for new shows. But now I'm sort of like, people are like, hey, Jake, I have this idea, or I have a show that already existing. I want to join the network. I already have materials made that I send them, and I can be like, hey, this is how it'll work.
Mhm.
This is what the workflow will be. And so I feel like moving forward in year 2, 3, 4, like everything should be a little bit less on my plate, but that doesn't mean that it still isn't a lot of time. So time management, man, time management is a bitch.
Yeah, and I brought up Haley earlier, but we were talking about we've talked about this since about as long as we've known each other, that Haley's someone who focuses on like one big thing at a time,
Yeah.
or like two things at a time, whereas I'm several things cooking on the stove. Like and that's sort of always been the way that I am and that I function.
Yeah.
And I don't think one is better than the other
No.
because I watch both you and Haley
It's all about
pursue
completion.
big
Yeah.
projects all the way through to completion,
Yeah.
which I don't tend to do. I tend to do smaller projects all the way through to completion. It's, to me, it's all about the completion. I want it.
Right.
I want it to be done.
That's what she said.
Okay, and so I think that's the suggestion that I was giving to Haley when we were talking about this was sort of we grow up in this country going to school where we have several different subjects during the day,
Mhm.
and if you apply that a little bit to your life and dedicate these times, like, okay, in the mornings I'm just gonna do Dragon Wagon,
Yeah, you talked to me once about your idea of like trying to treat life more like school. I remember we talked about this off of an episode once.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you sort of give yourself like time periods during the day of like from this o'clock to this o'clock. I'm gonna, and are you finding?
I'm a huge list maker with
that I am too.
check boxes, and that's something that also keeps me focused. But yeah, I don't want to work on any one thing for too long because I will get burnt out on that thing.
I feel like for me, I think I live in the middle of you two then, because I like you do also do a lot of things simultaneously. I guess when I say that I'm like very focused on one thing, it's more about like in the short term. Like that focus might be like this week I'm thinking about stuff in the network, and so like that's all I do. But that week there was some shit I needed to do for the other thing.
Yeah.
And then when it's time for me to concentrate on another thing, you and I, hopefully, if you're willing to stick around after this podcast, we're going to be play testing a tabletop game that I made. I literally designed a tabletop game with a friend of the show and former guest, Brian Finifter, and then I myself completely skinned it. I drew by hand over 120 individual cards that are used to play the game.
I must say that they're darling illustrations.
Thank you. They're not going to be the final. I am actually seeking an artist to do the final versions of them because I know what I want, and I know I can't achieve what I want, the look that I want. But in any case, that's another topic. But you can ask Ginger when I figured out what the theme was going to be for that game, because we had the mechanic worked out.
Yeah.
But we didn't know how to skin it. We didn't know what the game was, like what the story was. And once it clicked what it was, that was all I could do for a week. And for an entire week at Alexandra, I did nothing else but that. And that week I didn't put out an episode. I didn't, you know what I mean? I was late on another thing.
Shower.
I didn't shower. I didn't bathe. I took only one crap the entire week.
Wow.
So that's kind of how my mind works. But I do see those things through to completion.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why, maybe because the largest task right now on my plate is pre-production on the next project, on the next film. And since that is the largest, that is definitely a bigger task than getting out whatever the episode is that I'm trying to get out of this or any of the other shows on the network per week.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's sort of, and I'm figuring this out now as I'm talking to you, but maybe that's sort of like why that, because it's the largest one. It's easier to cross the smaller things off of your monthly checklist or your weekly checklist.
Of course.
Potentially.
That's one of those things that when video games came up with achievements, that turned into something that I've noticed that I do, and I've heard people talk about this, that an achievement in a video game is something that you can do, and you can sit and you can play the game and you can just like knock them off the list, and you do every time you get one, you feel like, oh, I've achieved something today, and you have not.
It really is like what is the the like chemical that supposedly goes off into your brain that makes you feel good. Like they say, like every time you get a message or something on Facebook or like, what do you know what it is?
No,
I can't think of what it is. People that are listening are screaming right now because they know what it's called. Like, it releases a serotonin in your head. I don't know. I'm making that.
Serotonin?
Serotonin? Does that sound like a thing?
That's a thing.
Is that a thing that pleases people when it gets released into their brains?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe that's what it is.
I mean, but endorphins, for sure.
Okay, so I feel like when you're playing a game like that, you build up towards that, and then you get it, and then you immediately go like, all right, well, I just spent hours collecting all of the feathers in Assassin's Creed, or whatever the thing is, finding every chest. Assassin's Creed is my biggest achievement getter game, so that's why that's my go-to. And then you go like, well, shit, now I'm on a low.
Yeah.
And you have to figure out then, now I'm going to clear the entire map. Now you figure out what the next thing is. Like you say, you go to the next achievement. It's fucking addiction. It is a legit, honest addiction. Now, how do I make the things I actually need to be doing in my life just as addictive as the things that I want to do?
Well, I think that's, I mean, the things that
I'm asking you because you have to have the answer, Paul.
I mean, the reason I even brought it up was that the achievements in a video game are so much easier to achieve, and one of the reasons that they are easier to achieve, and probably if a gamer listens to it, they're like, oh, well, there's this one achievement that's really, and I'm like, yeah, some of them are hard,
sure,
like, but the there's less consequence in the world of a video game. There's no anxiety really building up to it, or maybe
failure means nothing.
Exactly, and but you can build it up in your head to believe that is true too.
Yeah.
Like again, to talk about Haley, we're just gonna he's a big gamer.
Yeah.
And some of those video games, especially fighting video games, it's like have 300 wins in online matchups. That's not one that I ever seek to achieve. But that's something that, I mean, he also happens to be very good, so
right.
I guess he gets that pretty easily.
Sure.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, I mean, this isn't and by all means, we're not shitting on people who play video games. Like, everybody has the thing in their life that they do. And if you, just because you're doing that doesn't mean you're not succeeding in other things. Like, you and I personally happen to be the type of people who have a lot of things that we sort of desire.
Yeah.
There are plenty of people out there who are like, oh, I have my job and I go and I make great money.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have 6 hours a day free, and that's what I'm going to do with that time. And there's nothing wrong with that. At times, I wish that that's the way that my brain was, and that's but we don't have the types of lives where our goals are accomplished every day within 6 hours or within a 9-hour workday or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit harder for us to sort of manage that time. I feel like so much of my problem too is like the dauntingness of certain tasks that are not daunting at all. And then my ability to dive into shit that other people would find daunting that isn't to me.
Sure, yeah. Sarah hasn't done her taxes yet.
Okay.
And putting her on blast for that.
Sure.
And I don't find the task of doing taxes daunting at all. To me, it's like sort of like a game of like figuring it out and plugging in the numbers, like especially if you use something like TurboTax. It's just like, to me it's pretty easy.
Elaborate. Brought to you by TurboTax.
But a lot of people find doing their taxes and the thought of doing that very daunting,
right? And
they put it off so long.
There's also just a stigma to it of like, oh, what if I owe money?
Yeah.
So I think that's part of that specific thing. But no, I get that. So in any case, that's sort of like looking back on this year, managing the time better was something I could have done. But I'm still, I'm happy with what the year brought me. And I have to thank this podcast for where I am now as far as having the most incredible woman I've ever met in my life, because it was because of this podcast that we were sort of brought together. We knew each other via the internet previous to the show starting, but it wasn't until a specific episode early on in which I talked about the loss of my aunt, which you were actually on that episode after my opening.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until Alexandra actually reached out to me after listening to that and saying that it like we talked about earlier with just art, like she found a thread in that, and it touched her in a way, and she reached out to me, and I had the backstory here that I had asked her out previous to all of this, and she was in a relationship. Which, by the way, her response was, "Unfortunately, I'm in a relationship, so we're just going to go ahead and leave that out there."
Yeah.
But this was months prior, and then out of nowhere, she wrote me saying that she had listened and this, and she asked me if we want to get together, and I didn't know, like, are you still in a relationship? I didn't know where that was. But it turned out she was no longer in a relationship, and it was sort of because of that conversation that she initially emailed me about that show that led to. I mean, a very abrupt moving in with me, and just like, it's that
you're just putting it all out here now.
It's that very stereotypical cliche of like, when you know, but that's just the way it was. You could see the compatibility when all of the bullshit is out there and it's accepted. You know what I mean? Like all of the problems, the like, hey, these are all the skeletons in my closet. Where are your skeletons? Those are them. Great, I could deal with that, because that's all it is finding somebody who's compatible with your problems, right?
Yeah.
And it's all because of this podcast that happened. So like, I mean, that's probably the best thing that I could have asked for out of this show. If I stopped doing this show today, it would have been worth it because of that. But that's not the case. Hopefully the show will continue for many, many moons with many great guests and many great conversations, including the return of more Paul Bianchi.
Yes.
I think what happened, if I could go all the way back to the beginning of you saying to me the other day, like, yeah, I feel like when you started that podcast, you said that I was going to be on a bunch, and then I was only on a couple times, which is valid.
But I think if one was going to make a pie chart of this, I still am. I'm a pretty large slice.
You have the most appearances out of anybody.
Yeah,
absolutely. But I think simply what happened was the direction of the podcast changed. I think the show started as something that was more like what we did here today, of just sort of BSing and catching up and talking about kind of where we are and what we're doing. I think over weeks, once I started having people on the show who I didn't know as well as I know you, it became more interview based. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure what listeners enjoy better. I would love to hear your thoughts. If you're listening to this right now, do you enjoy the interview episodes? Do you enjoy it more when I don't know my guest, or you enjoy it more when I do know my guest? Not that there's not room for both. I'm just kind of curious to see people's thoughts about this. And as the show evolved over the past year, what were your favorite parts of the show? What is the things that you don't like about the show? I'd be curious about that.
Ooh, this is like setting up a mailbag episode.
We could do a mailbag.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can email jake@elaboratepodcast.com. And you can tell me what you like and what you don't like. Oh, you could just like write me on Twitter or any of those kind of places. I thought the email would be more official.
It does seem more official.
Right?
Yeah, send it to Scruff McGruff.
No, why would you say that? It's jake@elaboratepodcast.com. I just said that.
But I know his address from my youth.
Scruff. Wait, is that a thing?
Yeah. Don't you remember he was the dog who said like, take a bite out of crime.
His name was Scruff?
Scruff McGruff.
I remember McGruff. I remember that.
Well, his first name was Scruff.
Wow, I don't think I remembered his first name. Yeah, I could visualize in my head. He was a dog in a police outfit.
Well, he wore a trench coat, like he was a flasher.
Like a detective.
He was a detective.
He was more of like a Dick Tracy style detective.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you remember the address?
Like a flasher. No, I have no idea. What's their address?
Well, because it was a song, which is
we've talked about your insane memory on this show previously. It's mind-boggling.
Well, one of the things too is that like if I hear a song once, like especially a jingle, I will remember it for the rest of my life. It's a weird thing. And the song goes Scruff McGruff, Chicago, Illinois, 60652. So
I'm sorry, can you do that one more time?
Scruff McGruff, Chicago, Illinois, 60652.
A third one just for good luck.
Scruff McGruff, Chicago, Illinois, 60652.
See, there we go. See, you finally put a little bit of spunk on it. You got to put a little bit of mustard on it at the end there. It worked out really well.
Spunk or mustard?
A
healthy mixture of the two.
Yeah,
okay.
Mustard and spunk. Why you might make everything gross, Paul? Paul, how do people find you on the internet?
Appalling. But jokes. Well, they can check me out on Instagram. That's definitely the thing that I'm most active on. And so that's just my name with a the in front of it. It is the Paul Bianchi on Instagram. and I don't have a Twitter yet.
What kind of stuff do you Instagrams?
I
Just your life.
Yeah, just my life, and I do the thing that all people in LA do is I will occasionally, but not too much, I believe, promote things that I'm involved in.
Yeah, you're not good at promoting.
I'm not.
Neither am I.
Yeah,
It's really hard to be sincere about it.
yeah, because it mostly for me that just means like consume me as a product.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's also like, I don't know about you, but like having a social media for the sake of keeping up with your friends and having a social media for the sake of like trying to sell yourself, they're two very combative things.
Yeah.
And it's hard to have like one thing that does both. And I've struggled with the idea of like, maybe I should just like stop doing any self-promotion on my own shit and just start new crap. But then the concern is like, well, no one's going to add an additional profile or follow another thing. I struggled with that just in the early stages of this show. I didn't start Twitter or Instagram for Elaborate because I was like, well, it's one too many things.
I think for me, it's something I've had to come to terms with, that even as a writer, which I didn't think this initially when I started my journey into career and life, I didn't realize that you are selling yourself, and you yourself are a brand. And so
You just gave me douche chills.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's gross.
No,
but
I get it.
But it's true.
It's terrible.
And so my social media of my Instagram page, it is me genuinely posting things. But would I be posting, would I even have an Instagram if I didn't realize like I need to also have an online presence if I'm going to pursue the career that I want to pursue?
Right.
Probably not.
Yeah.
But I do take joy out of it though, because there is fun ways to connect with people, and mostly at this point it's just my friends. Right. But I like that Misunderstood has a separate Instagram, because that's been really rewarding too. It's sort of like having the audience full of people, having the people respond and make requests, and I've honored some of these requests. I actually just plugged a young woman's artwork who requested something that I followed through on, and
delightful.
that felt good to do. Yeah.
Speaking of Misunderstood, we've talked a little bit about it on the show. It's a fantastic podcast. Please check it out if you haven't already. I'm assuming that anybody who's listening to this episode of you is probably aware of it, because they're probably listening because they're listening to Misunderstood. They can hear that at dragonwagonradio.com, where you can hear all of the Dragon Wagon Radio podcasts. It is a great show where you sit with Sarah Oliver and teach her everything that you know about Greek mythology, which was sort of handed to you by your father, who was on the most recent episode.
He was, yeah.
Who is my favorite guest outside of myself. Your dad.
He does great unexpected voices.
Yeah. Can I say, for two people who are trained improvisers, your dad, sometimes he outshines both you fuckers. He is so good.
The way you crafted that sentence too, you made my dad sound like he is two trained improvisers, which I believe he's worth two trained improvisers.
Sure, he's incredible.
Yeah,
like out of nowhere, just like an RKO, just out of nowhere, he knocks it out of the park every time you like throw to him for something, and I'm like, oh, I hope Eddie gets that this is a bit. He's just on it immediately, and he's hilarious.
Well, of course, since if he's listening, I would have to say that he's much more of a Swanton bomb, because he was a Hardy Boys fan.
There you go. If he is listening, the delightful Bob Bianchi. Another thing that I got out of this podcast this year was that your father began sending me postcards, and they are my favorite days. When I open the mailbox and I see a Bob Bianchi postcard, I am not very good at writing back. Still to this day,
have you written back?
Yeah, not frequently. I have a stack of postcards that I buy every time I go someplace. I buy postcards.
That's my dad,
because I'm like, oh, great, this is great. I'm gonna send this to Bob, and then I never do it. But the reason he started sending me that was because in an early episode you told me about your dad's joy of writing postcards, and I was like, I wish that someone would send me postcards, and then the next week I got a postcard, which is just the best. So thanks for that, Bob, and I appreciate that. It means a lot to me. With all that said about social media, follow the show on social media at Elaborate Pod. That's on Instagram and Twitter. If you have enjoyed the show for this past year, I really truly need your help. And that is iTunes reviews. iTunes rating and reviews are the only way for the show to find organic listeners. If you don't have a good amount of ratings and reviews, you literally don't even come up in searches. And so if you're listening to this right now, it takes 2 seconds. You can just scroll down at the bottom of the Elaborate page on your iOS device and rate the show and write a short review, even if it's just simply like, I love the show, or whatever. I mean, it literally doesn't have to be eloquent and poignant. If you want to go ahead and take the time to do that, I'd love to hear from you and love to hear your actual opinions. But if time is of the essence, then you could simply just write a couple quick words and click submit. That really does a huge amount for me. And I would sincerely appreciate it. The one thing we didn't talk about on the show is that it's my birthday this week. Listeners from last year might recall that when I turned 34, I had a little bit of the birthday blues, and Paul Bianchi took me camping, and we had a fantastic time. I am once again feeling those birthday blues at 35.
Because it's going to rain on your birthday weekend.
And we had actually planned ahead of time this year to go camping just to find out that it's going to be raining, which is a total bummer, but maybe the skies will turn around for me and allow me to have a nice dry camping trip for my birthday.
That's a horrifying image, the skies turning around. Like, what does that mean?
Like they become black.
Yeah, like
and
the ozone layer
side,
on the bottom.
We all just die instantaneously.
Yeah, maybe that'll happen.
Maybe that. You know what? I'll take either one. What else do I got to talk about? If you enjoy the show and you want to show your support, go to dragonwagonradio.com/donate. As I talked a little bit about on this show, I do a lot of work for Dragon Wagon Radio. We do not make money on any of these shows. If you want to help out, you can donate directly to the show, or you can even set up monthly donations in a small amount or whatever amount you might like through PayPal. There's a button on the website right there for that. Or you can gift us something from the Amazon wishlist. There's a ton of stuff that I need for the studio and for expendables for guests, stuff like coffee and toilet paper to keep all the guests well fueled and well wiped. I think that's it.
I think you covered it all.
I covered it all. We talked in between things.
Yeah,
and it threw me for a loop.
We elaborated on like the wrap up, which is great.
That's bizarre. Sincerely, I absolutely love all of you. Thank you so much for listening, for sticking with me through an entire year. I really hope that you're getting something out of these chats, that you're learning about interesting, fascinating people, and you're learning about yourself through them. I really hope you stick around for year 2. I have a lot of great plans. I have great guests lined up. I am looking forward to extending my reach further beyond, my immediate surroundings. I'm looking forward to sitting down with people that I have looked up to, people that I admire and that I don't know. I am really excited for what the future holds, and I really sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate you listening right now. I wrap up every single show the same way by telling my guest that I love them. And today I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm also going to tell you, the listeners, I love you. Sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, I love you. Please be artists, not influencers. Create art, not content. Paul Bianchi, I love you.
I love you, Jake.
Dragon Wagon.